Hi, everyone. My name is Sara, and thanks for staying, to those of you who are here. My French is still a bit of work in progress, so I hope it's okay that I'll do this in English. Be careful. So today I'm really excited to be here because I'm talking about two of my favorite subjects. One is the sharing economy, and one is the notion of trust. So why are these two of my favorite things? So 3 years ago, I started doing research into the sharing economy for my thesis. And I interviewed a number of startup founders across Europe that were starting sharing economy platforms. And what I found in this research was that every single one of them said, Sara, our biggest issue is creating trust for our users. When someone gets into a shared car or rents an apartment, how do we make sure that they trust each other? And at the same time, there were reports coming out saying, from the US and also Europe, saying up to 90% of people are scared of taking part in the sharing economy because they don't trust strangers. So that's why I set aside to start Deemly. And we're basically a reputation and social verification tool for sharing economy businesses and peer-to-peer marketplaces, helping them build trust for their users. Besides that, I'm also a co-founder of Sharing Economy Denmark. So we work to create a better environment for the sharing economy, both for startups, but also trying to push legislation in the right direction. So today, I'll talk a little bit about trust tech and how that has evolved. More on the sharing economy, and I'm sure a lot of you already know a lot about it. A little bit of the teething troubles and the legislation around the sharing economy, some of the societal issues, and finally, a look into what the future holds for trust and the sharing economy. But first, I want to do a little experiment with you guys. So I want all of you to find your phones. I know that you have it because I've seen you all tweet. Can you take it out, please? Hold it up. I can't see you. Yes. Perfect. Then unlock it. Unlocked? Hold it up when it's unlocked. No cheating? Perfect. Then you just hand it to the person on your left or the one who is closest by. Uh-oh. Then you go to Photos. No, you don't actually have to do that. Don't do that. You're quite well behaved. I've had people sort of jump across seats to stop people from looking at their photos. But you apparently don't have that many dirty photos on your phone, so it's good. Anyway, you can hand it back now. So this slight sense of panic that you just had, or that you might still be feeling, that's exactly how a lot of people feel when they share their car, or their home, or their boat, or bike, or whatever it can be. And that's exactly the feeling that we're trying to combat. So if we take an academic approach to what trust actually is, it says like this: a firm belief in the reliability, truth, or ability of someone or something. So did you just feel a firm reliability in that someone holding your phone? Not really, right? So that is exactly what we're trying to go into here. For a decade now, we've been talking about the trust economy as a concept, right? That countries where trust is high have lower crime rates, companies that are deemed trustworthy have a better bottom line, and leaders that are deemed trustworthy are performing much better. But in fact, that's a lie, because we're actually living in a trust crisis. Edelman publishes a report every year, and the headline for 2017 was this: Trust Crisis. This came about already when we started the financial crisis almost a decade ago. But recently we've seen people like Trump, Brexit, maybe even the UK election today. And all these things means that there's political turmoil and that we lose faith and trust in our institutions and the leaders that we look up to. And so this is also a main driver for the sharing economy, because as people, we're inclined to trust other people. So when we lose faith and trust in these organizations, we try to seek out other communities where we can trust someone. So even though the sharing economy is helping us make more money or save money, it's also about creating communities that we can feel we're a part of. So if we look at how technology has also changed the notion of trust, this is one of the classic examples, right? 10 years ago, if I wanted to go to Paris on a holiday, I would go check out the reviews and ratings of any hotels. And if any of my friends had reviewed that hotel, that would weigh a lot more than any other strangers. But now, when we're looking to go into an Airbnb or stay with someone who we don't know, we're also checking ratings or reviews. But it also means that we're reviewing an experience and the effort that someone is putting into making my stay with her or him much better. And the new thing here is also that I'm being rated and reviewed as a guest. And that ensures that I probably will be more well-behaved. Maybe. So last year, the Federal Trade Commission in the US came out with this, saying reputation rating systems are critical for sharing economy platforms to build trust. And I think it even continued saying, otherwise threatens the existence of these platforms. Obviously, we knew that as a company, but it just goes to show how much power and value there is in using technology to build trust. So if we look more into the sharing economy and what trust means for this, just a little bit of background. So the sharing economy is set to grow to $335 billion by 2025. So it's only growing. And to date, it has created $24 billion companies, unicorns. And in my belief, in 10 years, I don't think it will be called the sharing economy anymore. It's just what we do. It's just how we live our lives, because it's necessary for us to optimize our resources. So I do a lot of keynotes, and a lot of people ask me, why is trust such an important part of the sharing economy? I mean, don't we just trust strangers? And yes, we do, because otherwise it wouldn't be a sharing economy. But trust in the sharing economy is very complex. And so I decided to explain this with a 3-level model. And this is going to be a little academic. I hope that your sugar levels are still okay just before lunch. So when a user is set to go into a peer-to-peer transaction, let's say I'm going to Paris, I want to book a hotel or an Airbnb. The first level that needs to be confirmed is trusting the concept. So do I trust that staying in an Airbnb is more viable than a hotel? There can be a number of factors within this. So is it even legal? What are the media saying about Airbnb? And is it something that my family and friends are doing as well? The second level is trusting the business. So do I trust that if something goes wrong, that Airbnb can handle this? Do they have insurance or a guarantee? Do they have 24-hour support? And what happens when stuff goes wrong? And there are even company review sites looking specifically into the sharing economy businesses to also use ratings and reviews here. But the ultimate level is obviously, do I trust the person I'm staying with? Trusting your peers. Because my experience of staying in an Airbnb is ultimately up to that person who I'm staying with. And naturally, that's what our business is mostly focused on. But we're also advising on the second level, trusting the business. And we're also very active in the political environment in terms of trying to spread what the sharing economy is all about. So some of the teething troubles of the sharing economy. So I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs in this space, and I can guarantee you, I'm sure all of you have probably heard of the Uber scandals and what's going on in legislation also for Airbnb. But there are thousands and thousands of smaller sharing economy entrepreneurs coming out. And I guarantee you that every single one has some kind of legislation that is preventing them from growing. One example is I would say, food sharing platform that I met in Copenhagen a couple years ago. So their concept was about if you had made too much food for dinner, you could put up a portion on the app, and anyone in your neighborhood could stop by and buy that for a cheap price. So they were trying to create healthier alternatives to takeaway, but also combat food waste. I mean, what's not to like? So they had to close down because of a rule from 1913 saying that you're only allowed to cook meals for others and make money off of it once a month. So suddenly these private chefs were called up by the health and safety regulations and were told that they had to be approved to be restaurants. And so the startup went into dialogue with the government and tried to fix it, and they did fix it 2 years later. So the startup had to revise and pivot their whole concept. But some of the issues that are apparent for all of the sharing economy platforms are three main ones, right? So employment. Are Uber drivers, are they freelancers? Or are they independent contractors? Or are they employees? No one really knows. There's been some kind of legislation in some countries, but everyone's still discussing it. Tax. Are we paying tax? Are we not paying tax? Should we pay taxes? And some of the bigger platforms have actually made deals with the government to make tax breaks. But how is a really tiny sharing economy platform supposed to do that? They don't have the resources. Insurance. How do we insure something that's shared with maybe 20 people? And it's on demand. That's also why we're seeing so many startups come out of the insurtech space. And there's going to be a lot happening in that space. Some of you might know April here. She's sort of a guru within the sharing economy, and she travels the world advising governments on how to legislate the sharing economy. And so she told me this last year, and she said, Sarah, when a government calls me up and says, oh no, Airbnb is taking over our city, we want to close them down. I say, I don't want you to legislate on something you haven't tried. So please go out and try and stay in an Airbnb and call me back. And I used that quote at a conference called Digital North just last month in Oslo, where the sharing economy was also a topic. And so I was in this room with a lot of public servants, and I asked, how many of you have actually tried Airbnb? And there were a couple that raised their hands, and one of them said, yeah, I tried Airbnb on a holiday, I loved it. Great, that's a good start. And so I said, how many of you have tried any local, smaller platforms? And I was on a panel with 3 of them. And no one raised their hands. And this brings me to this point, that when we legislate for the sharing economy, we need to remember that it's not just the Ubers and Airbnbs, but that there are thousands and thousands of small startups that have the potential to grow and also create a better environment for us. One of the things when we're building these platforms of communities is that sometimes the platforms grow so big that they also take in societal issues onto their platform. And there are a number of examples, but I brought one of them to you guys today. Have any of you heard of this hashtag tweet storm? Airbnb while black? A couple. Okay. So what happened last year was that a couple of researchers from Harvard Business School made an investigation on Airbnb and discrimination. So they created a number of fake profiles, and what they discovered was that if you have a black-sounding name, you're 16% less likely to get a booking with a host. And if you're a black host, or if you have a black-sounding name, then you earn much less money as well. Now, Airbnb obviously went into this, and they've now changed the platform, so anyone that signs up actually agrees to not discriminate. And they were talking a lot about it. But one of the important things that came out of this was these guys, inclusive. So I think they pitch it much better than I do, but they're basically an Airbnb for minorities. So they don't discriminate anyone, but they're sort of inclusive in that sense. And so the way they build their platform is that you can only get through a booking, but you don't see the picture of the person or the name until the booking has been complete. So essentially, they're saying they build a platform the way Airbnb should have been built. But that's a problem, because that kind of data, our images, our photos, our names, is also part of the data that creates trust. So how do we balance creating a platform that doesn't discriminate, but still gives trust on data? So we actually partnered up and are looking into how can we use our technology and saying, well, you have good ratings and reviews, but we'll still hide anything that can discriminate you, basically. So again, this is a testament to how powerful technology, and especially these trust elements in our data, can be. So when we look to the future, this is one of my favorite quotes from Business Insider that came out last year. It says, if the sharing economy can learn to share its data, everyone would benefit. And we're actually seeing more and more of the bigger platforms opening up for their data through APIs. And people always ask me, why is that? Why would anyone open up to their data that is so sacred? And there are two main reasons. One is, these platforms have so much data that they can't even handle to go over it. So they're saying, please help us analyze the data. Where is the value in what we're generating? But also that the EU and the US government are saying, you guys should share more data so we actually understand more about this new industry and so that we can legislate accordingly. So when we look at data about ourselves, there's a number of startups all around working on how can we potentially move our trust or our data or our reputation into other factors. And what we're seeing now is that there are startups working for job applications, CVs, predictive hiring on a number of data that's not maybe skill related, but more about how you are as a person. Dating apps, we're seeing much more information about who we are as people into the dating apps, not just our photos. And bank loans. So there's already a bank in Asia testing giving out bank loans based on your Airbnb reviews, with the notion that you're much more trustworthy, much more likely to pay back your loan, whether you have the money or not, if you're a trustworthy person. So my final thing is, I wonder how trusting you guys are. So Eurostat created this survey last year where they asked 24 European countries and their citizens to assess how trusting they are as citizens. So they created this scope where I do not trust any other person, 0, and most people can be trusted, 10. So how many in here are French? Almost all of you. Okay, so where do you think France is on this line? Just shout a number. 6? 6? 4? 7, 3, 9, 10? Okay. Okay. Oops. You're actually bang on number 5. So you might be thinking, oh, that's good. We're straight in the middle. We're not naive. We're not, super vicious people either. But it might be interesting to see where the 23 other countries are, because they're here. So France is actually the least trusting country in the EU. You might know why that is more than me. So you're probably also wondering, what's the most trusting country in the EU? Do you have any guesses? UK? Sweden? Iceland? Yeah, close. Denmark. Did I mention I'm from Denmark? Yeah. You might think that I'm naive now. Anyway, I hope that we can bridge that trust gap together and build more trust for the world. Thank you so much for listening. Be happy.